Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's Tips and Tricks webinar. As you can see, today's topic is on SD-WAN and security. Please use the Q&A chat. If you have any questions during the webinar, we'll make sure we get to those. Our presenter today is our solution architect, Justin Souter. Justin, what do you have for us today?
All right, thanks, Rob. Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Yeah, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time today going through SD-WAN, what we're doing in that space, dive in technically with a little bit of a precursor to it. I think we share out the slide decks and everything like that. I'm not going to belabor the points in these. We'll get right into the juicy bit of it. This is probably the most marketing-esque slide I have for this. But I use this slide really to discuss how SD-WAN is built on top of a lot of the existing security components that we have in our products. If you talk about any of the quantum appliances and the goals of SD-WAN, what are some of the things we're trying to solve? Connecting multiple branches. We've had VPN code for 30 plus years. That's still an element to SD-WAN to create the transports that we can do traffic steering across. Enhanced connectivity from the very smallest to the largest appliances, ones with integrated 5G. We work with customers that are using Starlink, that are using fiber copper handoffs, all kinds of different private MPLS, things like that as well. So any of the appliances will run SD-WAN as long as that appliance is capable of running R8120 or above, where SD-WAN was introduced. Steering itself is a little bit new. There are some caveats to that. If you want to look at like application-based routing, which there's a couple SKs out there for that, but SD-WAN makes that much more intuitive. And it's based on application control and URL filtering. The application appwiki.checkpoint.com has all the components of that are listed. I forget what the number is as of late for the total number of applications, but there's a lot of those that are already built and people can use their own as well. Lastly, the security piece. Obviously, it's not a checkpoint conversation if we don't at least put some security into it. SD-WAN gives you the ability to start doing things like local breakout, where I can take a branch office and send certain traffic directly out to the internet versus home running it back to a monolithic data center stack of security. The important part for that is if I start doing that, now I have more presence to the internet, more potential ingress and certainly egress points for a security event. We'll frequently talk about the other components of Checkpoint. Again, since SD-WAN is integrated as a software blade onto our quantum appliances, then all of the normal threat prevention stories, the firewall, the best of breed management, those pieces come into play as well for that. Rarely are we deploying these as just doing SD-WAN, although we do that in some cases with customers if they want to. I'd say 95% of the time we're doing it as a combination of a security gateway first with SD-WAN on top of that. I'm not going to read through this one. You guys can look at it on the recording and in the shared piece afterwards. But this really just emphasizes, like I said, any of the appliances that we run up-to-date code can run SD-WAN. There are no special appliances for it. The performance impact is usually negligible. If anything, when we're working with customers to size on appliances, it's the enabling of the additional blades like VPN and things like that, where we're doing encryption that will actually add far more performance impact than anything else. So I usually use an anecdote of about 5% for SD-WAN. It in and of itself is very light there. The components of SD-WAN and how they work. Everything below the dashed line, I kind of simplify into, if you're running Checkpoint today, you're familiar with this. You manage the gateways exactly as you would any other ones. If it's Smart One Cloud, if it's on-prem, if it's multi-domain, if it's Smart Center, if it's everything other than standalone. The story stays the same on how you manage those appliances. If I go kind of up and around, starting from the management server to the Infinity portal, for those who are using that already or those who aren't, that's kind of our landing page for any of our as a service products, SD-WAN being one of the things in there. So the first thing we do with any customer is enable object sharing. That takes all the objects that you already have created, your networks, your access roles, anything particular that you have on there that you'd want to do particular traffic steering for. and it makes it available so that you can use it in the steering rules and monitoring for SD-WAN. And within the Infinity portal, and I'm going to go through that live with you guys and show you what some steering rules look like. So we won't spend a lot of time there, but that's where you're going to be doing your policy management of your SD-WAN steering. Last, down on the bottom left there, that nano agent sitting on the gateway. That's a very light agent. Its job ultimately at the end is to um, enforce the SD-WAN policy and monitor the links that you tell it to. So if you have a rule that says send Zoom traffic over the link with the lowest latency, it will be monitoring those links for low latency based on a destination that you configure, and it will make the final decision into what path to steer that across. SD-WAN decisions are recorded into your security logs as well. So if you're looking at your regular logs that you're used to in Checkpoint and you have SD-WAN enabled, you will see a new section in there that says, this traffic for Zoom used, SD-WAN rule 5, and it chose WAN link 2, for instance. So you'll actually start seeing that data incorporated into the security logs as well. To kind of set the stage a little bit for what I have with my lab, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well. I get asked a lot of questions, and sometimes there's a lot of confusion about SD-WAN versus SASE for us. So I support the SD-WAN piece, which runs in Quantum, right? The physical appliances, CloudGuard, virtual appliances, things like that. The SASE team is different. However, we do overlap quite a bit. What I like to say, and I'll show you more in my lab about that idea, is if I'm using both of those together, I can make decisions on my branch offices. Is it big enough that it warrants having a physical appliance? Do I need to do east-west segmentation of that environment? Whatever reason, there might be for having a physical appliance there. If so, then that's an SD-WAN story. But we can also say maybe some of our other sites are 5 users and they have one, modem or, one cable connection from Comcast, for instance. That might be a good example of where I just connect to SASE and I'm done. What I can do with those SASE gateways that are in the cloud, I can actually incorporate those into my SD-WAN fabric as well. And so I can have this mesh, or the Checkpoint terminology, if you look at all the material, is hybrid mesh, where I can have a mix of remote users running a client, small sites that don't have a Checkpoint appliance on them that hook into a cloud gateway, and sites that have full Quantum appliances, clusters, Maestro, whatever in there, all talking to each other within the confines of how I structure that community or that mesh fabric for the devices to talk to each other with. So there are some differences there. That's one. If anyone has follow-ups, we're happy. Myself and the SASE team, we do a lot of joint conversations with customers to directly talk about your use cases, and happy to do that in any cases. Or if you guys have questions here at the end as well, we can get into that. Again, I won't hit on all of these, but this is just kind of an idea of what's coming down the pipe for SD-WAN. Some of the big ones that come up, the application QoS and guarantees, being able to, that's actually very short term and in EA now, where I can actually say every Teams meeting, guarantee it 2 meg of bandwidth, things along those lines, or limit YouTube streaming to 1 meg per user kind of things. Some of that stuff exists in application control today. It's not as granular and maybe not as always intelligent as what we're trying to do with SD-WAN there, but that's a very popular one. The layer 2 adjacency support is also in EA. That is the ability to use things like private metro Ethernet, anywhere if your sites where you have a private fiber ring or something like that, where your sites actually wind up being layer 2 adjacent to each other on the head end there. Better integration with Harmony SASE. I have that working, and again, I'll talk through that, but just making that simpler and fewer clicks is one of the big targets between the two groups this year. And then with RAD2 and the introduction of Elastic XL, that's another one that we're working on as well, to support Elastic XL in this environment. And we're always trying to scale to a larger number of branches. Right now, I think we easily say 500 to 1,000. is good. We do need to be a little concerned on that, depending on if you're looking at mesh or hub and spoke for that. So there's some design considerations in there. But if you have opportunities or thoughts around scaling past that, I'd love to hear from you on that as well. Just a few quick things on this, and these will be, obviously available afterwards as well. The SD-WAN SK180605 is great. It has a troubleshooting section in it that I will frequently refer customers and partners to take a look at that. Same with the admin guide. If you're a partner, there's some really good training videos out there. They're well maintained, they're not dated, and they're relevant to, I think there's 15 or 20 of them based on different topics within SD-WAN and diving much deeper into that. And they're maintained by R&D. Lastly, in the thread of the open garden approach about working with other vendors as well, I put 2 SKs in here that we'll share afterwards. I do occasionally run into these, which is why I included them, that if you're looking at some other service or you have Microsoft SSE or Zscaler or things like that, we can actually do integrations with those with the checkpoint appliances as well. So, there's an element there. Obviously, like every vendor, I think if you have the same on both sides, there's going to be more compatibility and less setup. But we do have customers that are functionally using all those things in there. So that's it for the death by PowerPoint. If we're going to go into lab and look at some stuff there, just to kind of set the stage on what's happening here, this is the environment I built. I would love to hear from you guys if there's other scenarios you can come up with. But I've incorporated this into my usual talk track. And if we get to the question and answers, I can show you guys a lot more of this live as well. But if I work my way left to right, you can see my remote users reflected over here. That's just going to be the Harmony SASE client running on a laptop or any device I have out there. And I have 2 gateways that are running Harmony SASE. Those obviously connect to internet. Down at the bottom here, if you guys aren't aware, Harmony SASE also has a WireGuard client option. I've actually built a small little virtual office in Azure to show what the WireGuard stuff looks like. There's a Linux host, that Bastion host running there that's running the WireGuard client. It becomes the router and it tunnels everything into Harmony SASE. And so SASE becomes kind of a pivot point. The Harmony SASE gateways become a pivot point for kind of my environments or crossing between that scenario where I said, here's a small office that doesn't need a checkpoint gateway and my other offices that do. Going to the right-hand side, this is my home gateway. I am doing DIPE and I'm using a fiber connection and I've got a 5G modem connected to it permanently. So I'll use these 2 links for any of my testing at home. I do run a CloudGuard image in Azure as well. I'm more proficient with Azure, so I use it more frequently. However, we can also, of course, do any of the other cloud-supported images. We have customers using OCI, AWS. I don't know if I've worked with anyone doing GCP yet, but the image is the same, so that should also be supported on that side. I use Azure because it's the one I'm most comfortable with. And I also have one single appliance that's using a cellular connection. It's the 1595 ruggedized with 5G in it. So I've got a SIM card running in that as another kind of sample office there. So I think this reflects fairly well a lot of the options that I've seen customers use and kind of that mesh between the two. But the idea would usually be, from me sitting behind my data center firewall, I can use the infrastructure that's built here. And I'm doing route-based VPN, but I can access other small offices. When I was in CPX, if I talked to any of you guys or showed you, I had my Perimeter 81 Harmony SASE client running here, and I was coming across these paths going back down to resources that were in my home lab or going across to resources in Azure. So this is really, I think, bringing that meshed concept together and giving you a lot of flexibility in your different offices to decide, yes, I need a checkpoint appliance, insert reason here, or no, I don't. That one's simpler and I can keep things, very basic and stand it up, standing up Harmony SASE gateways is a matter of 5 minutes of clicking in the Infinity portal and 10 minutes of building. And the WireGuard stuff was also ridiculously easy to set up and quick there. So there's definitely, I think a scaling piece and a fast to deploy element that's very good here. And then obviously with SD-WAN, I can talk about all the complexities that are involved with regular quantum gateways, the full threat prevention stack, the east-west firewalling, the centralized management, all the other pieces there. So that's the end of my death by PowerPoint. I do want to pivot into, let me switch, actually it's probably just easier if I switch my screen share here, Rob, um, just for the sake of this. Let's see.
No problem.
Let me know if you can see that.
Yep, I've got your portal.
Great. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is my tenant. The Infinity portal, for anyone who's not familiar, is where all of our as a service products land. So you can see all the different components here. Everything that I usually support is in the Quantum stack. Although SASE living over here is kind of the one that I interface with the most otherwise. But looking into how to build an SD-WAN steering policy, I think we've done a good job of making it intuitive and making it, if you're used to managing checkpoint gateways, this is going to flow very, very naturally. One comment on the number of rules with SD-WAN. I've talked to customers that have other dedicated vendors, that have consolidated vendors, and the one general theme is if they have over, I had one customer, they said like they had 150 rules, and they said it was nightmarish to troubleshoot what was happening. So I come from the background of the security side where that would be a good start in a security policy. So I do try to encourage people to keep your rule base simple. Obviously there's going to be use cases that come up where you're going to need to take into account certain things and maybe it grows, but I think that a simpler rule base is always preferred here. But as a reminder, this will also, the decisions for this will get put into the regular security logs as well. So you'll see those logged in your, however you access logs today. If I pick on a particular rule here, let's look at web conferencing since we're using that, and that's a big part of our daily lives. Just going left to right, it's very, very similar to writing an access rule. Where am I coming from? This is where I mentioned the object sharing. This client subnets is a network object that I built in my Smart One Cloud tenant. And I can just drop it right into a rule base easily enough. So that's where I'm coming from. Where am I going to? I can put particular things in here. I also have dynamic objects that SD-WAN creates, like SD-WAN Internet will take into account gateway topology and a few other things as well, where it will actually, be more intelligent about how it steers different traffic there. What application or port or service do I care about? Again, I can just hit the plus button and drop that in for what I'm talking about here. Behavior, this is where SD-WAN shines. And again, I call it all radio buttons and checkboxes to define how to steer traffic. Very, very simple. You can see any of my options here. Local breakout, the picture reflects, hey, I'm going straight to the internet. If I have a scenario where I do need to backhaul traffic for some reason, I can do that here. Maybe this is IP authenticated service or something like that. Or even prioritize local breakout and have a secondary link. This is used primarily if customers are using or keeping MPLS or some layer 2 private connection between the sites there and want to supplement that with a DIA line. So that's going to the internet. Overlay, very simple. This is going to hit the SD-WAN fabric that is built between the gateways, however you have that configured using IPsec tunnels. What steering as steering candidates is what interfaces do I want to use for that link. So we'll go back to this one here and I'll keep the local breakout. If you have a reason that you never want to send certain traffic over a link or you only want to send it over a certain link, I can do that here. These are aliases that are mapped to the gateways themselves. I can use tags to make that dynamic, where you put a tag on an interface and it will use that primarily. So obviously WAN 1 and WAN 2 are not physical interface names. This also allows you to have a mix of, for instance, CloudGuard where I have an ETH0 interface and a physical appliance where I have a Quantum Spark appliance where I have actual WAN interface. or a full quantum box where maybe I have a line carded in it's ETH 104. That doesn't matter. I abstract that into the SD-WAN piece, and I can use these generic tags here. I'm gonna have to remember to cancel because my lab when I do this is usually when I start breaking stuff later when I change them and forget. So I pick the links, then I go in and I set my high water marks. That agent that we talked about running on the gateway will do latency, jitter, and packet loss monitoring. So these are the high water marks. Any interface that meets these criteria or is below those will be marked as eligible to steer traffic across. Then what do I do with that? I have two options. One is prioritize. That will pick the best link that I have available. And you can see the details here. I can drag and drop and change the priority of what I care about more. I can set a margin so that I say that the standby link has to be this number better than the other one before doing a failover. I can also do manual order of links if I want to do anything. Um, or if I have a driving reason to change the order of it there. So that's pretty granular there. Very popular one, especially as people are looking at using more commoditized internet, is link aggregation. Let me actually take and steer traffic over both of the links. If I'm doing that for internet-based traffic, I'm going to do that per connection. Obviously, because the other side is going to might be confused if it's getting some packets from one ISP and some from another. If I'm doing that over an overlay connection, because I have the additional IPsec data, I can actually do that per packet and send that over across both links. So gone are the days of having to having to pick one link and have a standby one that you're not using for anything, or you have to get real creative with dynamic routing or something like that to use multiple links. Just with the radio button here, I can take advantage of multiple circuits at a site. The last piece on steering is, as I mentioned, that Nano Agent is also doing probing of configured targets. Right now we support ICMP and HTTP for that, and you can see I can put up to 5 targets in here. The multiple targets is important. By default, I think we just do quad 8s. But having multiple targets is important. I had one customer tell me a story where they were doing that to monitoring the quad 8s with another solution, and we all know that it probably almost never goes down, but the one time it did for some reason or another on the internet, their entire WAN fell apart because everything was monitoring quad 8s and everything assumed that the entire internet was down when that was out there. So do as I say, not as I do is a good example here of having multiple targets that you probe on here, and that way you'll get you're not reliant on a single destination. That might fail at some point for this. And lastly, I set the check interval. How often do I want that nano agent to probe that target? It's probably a little deeper for the time we have today, but if you do have complex NAT scenarios, if you're hosting things and you need a host to be NATed out one IP for one ISP and another IP for the other ISP, we can support that in here as well. And then the enforcement, think of that like the install on column in your policy. I could have profiles here that, some sites have a certain application and so they get this rule, other sites don't, so they don't have to have that rule. I can get granular here on which gateways in my environment are enforcing which rules in the policy. Closing on the monitoring piece, you can kind of see it, just go look at last 24 hours here. This is my lab, so you'll see a bunch of different things happening from time to time. A number of gateways that are done here. An SLA heat map of my different gateways that I can drive into the details of that and see that per gateway to see what that looks like. Tunnel monitoring for all of my environment and what's up and down. Again, I can dive into that in more detail as well. Steering which rules are being hit the most. Probably the most interesting one, or I guess closing top applications and top users. I'm working on putting identity awareness into this. Obviously, that's a big component of tying this to users. But if I look at link swaps, this is where I view SD-WAN as doing its job. This is what it's supposed to do, is to prevent users from noticing that there's problems and instability in the link. So if I pick SG-1800 is my primary gateway. You can see details in here of exactly what's happening and why. Timestamps, what is happening here. I'm going from WAN 1 to WAN 2. Now I'm adding this in. Now I'm going 2 to 1, and a reason for it. It's actually just today, and if I look at the timestamp, usually I have yeah, started this call 11:11. We had my 5G connection exceeded packet loss threshold. I have these tuned down pretty low, partly to generate these, but also just to kind of have the conversation there that normally there's some elements that happen there. If I look at a particular steering rule, you'll also see I get historical data of latency jitter and packet loss for that link too. So I can actually troubleshoot different pieces and look historically. As soon as that agent's running, it's collecting this telemetry and sending it into the Infinity portal. So if I'm troubleshooting something that's been happening over the past week, all I have to do is, take a look at the last 7-day filter, see what's happening here, and you can see I can start getting more of that telemetry populated pretty quickly. Which link was active? Oh, did I have a problem where for some reason, my latency on a certain ISP has been 500 milliseconds for the past couple weeks. I need to call them to troubleshoot or something like that. So that's the monitoring component. The last piece I wanted to show you guys is just what the CP view piece looks like from a CLI perspective, if you're a fan of that more so. So in the Infinity portal, we're going to see that data live. Or I'm sorry, in the Infinity portal, we'll see it live and historic. Obviously, in CP view, we're going to see it just live. There is history in here, which you can export and do a lot of stuff with, and it's really cool. But you'll see in here kind of the monitoring that's a friendly interface. So this is my home gateway. This is telling me all those probing targets that are configured across my steering rules, what ISP I'm caring about, how I'm probing them, and then what my latency jitter and packet loss is across those different targets. Overlay, this is going to be my peer. So this is actually kind of cool. For those very familiar with VPN, you'll know about link selection and picking particular IPs that a gateway will use to create tunnels. With SD-WAN, link selection actually gets ignored. So I mentioned, being able to load share across multiple paths. What this is showing here live is my 2 ISPs at home, the one behind a 5G here, and then my 2 ISPs that are on the Azure side. And you can see they've actually completely meshed and built 4 tunnels across them so that I can steer traffic across all 4 of those to access my Azure resources if I want to. So this is actually, you're getting more utilization of those circuits as well, even for your site-to-site connectivity because of SD-WAN ignoring link selection, doing its own thing and saying, every SD-WAN interface I have, I want you to peer with every SD-WAN interface on my peer. And if that's mesh or hub and spoke, it will calculate that and it will build tunnels up and across all of those. And then last, this is just kind of a live stat of my different steering objects and what the current measurements are for them, and then the thresholds for it, and which interface is actually being used live for that steering object. So I think you have a lot of flexibility in how SD-WAN is deployed. Doing the rule basis is pretty simple. The big part that I'll spend time on with customers is usually upfront, and it's architecting. It's talking about what your goals are. Do you want to get rid of MPLS? Do you want to add more circuits? Do you want to add Starlink because it's in a small town? Those pieces, talking about, do we want to do domain or route-based VPN? There are reasons for both. I really like domain-based. I think it's simple. I think all the competitors kind of default to route-based, which is good, and that's fully supported by us. And it's actually what I'm running as well because it's more steps to set up. So, with that, again, there are very good reasons for that we could, probably spend 2 or 3 more tips and tricks on. But I also encourage people, especially with simpler environments, that domain-based usually is just as good, and it will get you the exact same resiliency as any kind of route-based VPN that's using dynamic routing protocols there. So Rob, I feel like I flew through a bunch of stuff there. I don't know if questions came in, or I think we're kind of at time, so I want to be conscientious of that. But I'm happy to live show you guys anything or anything else. That's kind of the end of my shtick on SD-WAN there.
Yeah, go take a sip of water. A lot of information, Justin. Good stuff. Yeah, I had a couple questions for you. Some of them you covered already on the in the prezo, but just to be clear, so does SD-WAN work with Spark appliances, the SMB appliances?
Yes. So and there is a differentiator there. If everything I've shown today is the enterprise version of SD-WAN. So that's going to be Spark appliances that are centrally managed. If again, Smart Center, multi-domain, Smart One Cloud, those things. If you're doing Spark management via the Infinity portal, or you're doing just locally managed Sparks, there is an SD-WAN flavor on that. You can do a lot of steering. You can do a lot of the same stuff. The one thing you can't do with SD-WAN in that locally managed version is the overlay stuff. So any of the site-to-site connectivity, monitoring, things like that. That's not available in the local version. But to that point, this gateway that I'm running at home, that's running the enterprise one, is a Spark. That 5G one I have is a Spark. My CloudGuard is CloudGuard, and then obviously I have the Harmony SASE gateways, so they definitely will mesh there.
Yeah. Yeah, one question was about using a cellular connection, so that's obviously yes, you showed that, correct?
Yep.
Let's see. I'm just looking through here. I think you answered a lot of these. Is it possible to limit capacity usage for specific ISPs? Like use one for a backup? Uh,
Yeah, so I can set the manual order of links if I want to in the steering object. We kind of talked through that. One of the things, so I will share, I actually left this in because I wondered if it might come up. Let me share this real quick. Share. I'm not going to go back into here, but you can see here.
yeah,
This is probably, so this is what I mentioned with the QoS stuff being in EA. QoS is a bit of a loaded term because obviously we do support that on the gateways now. We support honoring the SDP tags, all of those pieces. What we want to do with QoS though are things like this. I think that's probably the crux of the question.
yeah,
Here's my YouTube QoS object. I want to limit YouTube to 30% of the bandwidth, or I want to limit it to 1 meg per connection, stuff like that, right? On that piece of it. So that is in E8 now. That the documentation for that is actually on the public page for SD-WAN. We're pretty open about what's happening in EA. If you have a case and you're interested in running that or providing feedback or even just seeing it, reach out and we can have that set up. But the two pieces there are going to be the ability to limit like this and the ability, the other one, to guarantee, right? I
okay,
want to turn that around and say guarantee 2 meg per connection for Zoom or whatever I'm writing here.
perfect. I think that covers the questions.
Okay.
Let me see. We'll do our outro here. Let's see. Yep. Thank you, Justin. Great information. Like Justin said, we'll send a follow-up email with any reference content and the recording link of this session. Our next webinar will be in 2 weeks. You'll see an invitation for that soon. But with that, we'll let you go. Justin, thanks again. And everybody else, thanks for joining. We'll see you here next time. Enjoy your day.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
all. See ya.